The tents are going up. The coolers are packed. And somewhere deep in the woods, a campfire flickers to life. It's summer again. That perfect time for s'mores, swimming, and ghost stories whispered in the dark. But not all campers make it at home. Some stories stay behind, hidden in the trees, echoing in the dark. Welcome back to the Wild Archive, and tonight we're diving into true tales of summer camp terror. Real accounts from those who went looking for fun in the forest and found something else instead. So, tonight we are going to, I'm going to share some, scary, true camping horror stories. I'm gonna do a little mix-up. I'm gonna take some from ChatGPT. It's gonna create some stories and whatnot. But then I'm also gonna read some from Reddit, some true stories from Reddit. So here's the first story. r/let's not meet. U/ in parentheses deleted. It's called The Disturbing Camping Encounter. Background. I worked summers as a camp counselor in the northern parts of Ontario, Canada. On the date this particular incident occurred, I was camping with a group of 10-year-old boys on the same lake the summer camp was based on. So, like a routine camping trip, we canoe out to the site and set up our tents. Me and my co-counselor, Mike, take turns supervising the kids while they swim, build forts, and play games, etc. We cook some food over the fire, sit around and tell stories, cook s'mores, the typical Canadian camping experience. Around 9:30ish, I tell the kids it's time for bed, and they head into their tents, which were positioned a small walk away from the shoreline, but still in line of sight from where we had the fire pit. So the kids have gone to bed, and me and Mike are shooting the shit by the water, smoking a cigarette. Just basically hanging out before we decide to head into our tent and call it a night. What happened next still troubles me to this day, and remains my go-to scary camping fire story. We were both gazing into the pitch-black night water when we saw a small light approaching us slowly and slightly above water level. We speculated what it could possibly be for a few minutes, before it came close enough for us to see that it was mounted on the front of a kayak and that someone was approaching our campsite. Now, it is important to note that as a camp counselor, part of our training goes over how to deal with stranger encounters in an environment where we were responsible for a group of children on public property. I was prepared to give the mystery peddler and the typical speech about how we were camping with a group from a recognized organization, and we would respectfully ask that they find another campsite. However, this person's appearance shook me to the bone as the light drew nearer. Paddling this kayak was a woman who looked to be in her 60s. She had incredibly long wisps of gray hair that was trailing in the water. Her skin looked like old leather, and her dead-looking eyes were tough to spot under all her wrinkles. She looked directly at me, and when she spoke, I realized she was missing most of her teeth. "Are all your children safe in bed?" she asked, me pointing in the direction of the tents. Not really knowing how to respond, and quite frankly shitting myself, I responded by telling her that they are fine, and she'd have to leave. "That's good. Just as expected for this time," she said with a smile, then turned her kayak and paddled off into the night. At this point in time, at this point in time, myself and Mike were legitimately very creeped out, not only by the appearance of this mystery woman who resembled a freaking corpse, but also her inquiry on the whereabouts and safety of the kids we had brought on this trip. Not knowing what else to do, we grabbed our hunting knives and sat by the fire after checking on the kids. Half an hour later is where shit started to really get creepy. Across the lake, a female counselor was leading another group of kids, the same age group. She sent me a text which read something along the lines of, "Hey Sean, stop screwing with us. This isn't funny. My kids are really creeped out." I instantly called her and let her know I had just seen someone near my campsite that seemed eerie, and that I was not trying to play a joke. Apparently, one of their kids had opened their tent to take a piss and seen a woman with long hair standing with her arms opened towards them near the shoreline. Interesting. Yeah, that's spooky. Let's go to, we're gonna, go to some stories created by, Chat GPT. So, I got a couple stories, so here we go. This one's called The One-Eyed Thing at Camp Echo. They say every camp has a cabin nobody talks about. At Camp Echo, that was cabin 9. It sat tucked away behind the mess hall, buried in thorns and vines like the forest was trying to forget it. Kids whispered about it every summer, saying a boy disappeared in there disappeared in there years ago, just vanished during the storm. No one ever found him. All that was left behind was his sleeping bag, perfectly laid out, and a single muddy footprint at the door. That's it. The camp shut the cabin down, but legends, they don't shut down. They grow. This summer, 4 boys, Leo, Marcos, Jamal, and Evan, dared each other to sneak in and spend one night in there. No phones, no flashlights, just candles and a cheap sleeping bag they found in Lost and Found. Leo, the brave one, said it was probably all just a scare tactic, a way to keep kids from wandering too far. But Jamal, he always said he believed in energy. And cabin 9 felt heavy before they even stepped inside. They broke in just after midnight, slipping through a loose board in the back wall. The air inside was thick, damp. Everything smelled like mildew and iron. Not old blood, but something close. They set up their candles, joking and daring each other to go in the corner where the missing kid's bunk used to be. Evan even scratched his name into the wall with a rock. For a while, it was just laughs, nothing weird. Then, the wind stopped. They didn't notice at first, but the usual sounds of the woods were gone. No crickets, no rustling, not even a breeze. Just dead silence, pressing against the wooden walls. That's when the dragging sound started. At first, it was soft, like a blanket being pulled slowly across the floor outside. But then it got louder, closer, a slow, deliberate drag, like something heavy, wet. They all froze. Leo tried to peek out the broken window, but Jamal grabbed him and whispered, Don't. His eyes were wide. Don't look. That's how they get you. And then, the knock. One soft knock on the door. Then another. And another. Each knock spaced out, slow, like whatever was on the other side was learning how to use its limbs. Marcos whispered, "Maybe it's one of the counselors trying to scare us." Leo, trying to be brave, opened the door. Nothing. Just woods, moonlight, quiet. But when he stepped outside, he froze. There, at the edge of the woods, was a shape. Low to the ground, pale as bone, with limbs that didn't bend right. Arms too long, fingers curled backward, and a head that hung like it was broken. But the worst part? In the middle of its torso, at its face, was a single, enormous, yellow eye. It blinked slowly, like it was adjusting to the light. Leo couldn't move. The thing didn't charge, didn't growl. It just watched. Then, it began to drag itself forward. Leo ran back in, slamming the door behind him. "There's something out there," he gasped. And then they heard it again. The dragging, now circling the cabin. Something brushed the outer wall, and then stopped. And then they heard something whisper inside. But the door was locked, window sealed. Nothing had come in. And yet, whose name is carved in the wall? A voice whispered. A voice like someone trying to remember how to speak. Evan started to cry, because he remembered he carved his name into the cabin wall earlier. The candlelight flickered, went out. The cabin went black. No one remembers falling asleep. They woke up at dawn. All of them, except Evan. His sleeping bag was empty. The door was still locked from the inside. No broken windows, no signs of struggle. Just a single muddy footprint by the door, pointed inward. They searched the woods, called his name, but Evan was gone. Forever. Camp Echo closed that summer. Cabin 9 was torn down a year later. But if you ever go hiking up near Stillwater Creek and you see a pale thing watching you from the trees with a big yellow eye where its heart should be, don't carve your name in anything, because names are how it remembers. Story 2. The Hollow Ones. They called it the Singing Tree. Out past the cabins, way beyond the rope's course, and down a barely visible deer trail, there was a spot the counselors warned kids not to wander into. The forest there was too quiet, the air too still. But every so often, especially on muggy nights after a storm, someone would swear they heard music coming from deep in the woods. Not instruments, but voices, humming, singing lullabies. Jessie, a counselor in her second year at Camp Willowglade, had always chalked it up to kids scaring themselves. That changed the night she followed a crying sound into the woods. She had been walking a homesick camper back to their cabin when she heard it. Soft sobbing. Faint, just barely carried on the wind. She thought another camper might have wandered off. She told the kid to wait and followed the sound. It led her off trail through thick trees toward a strange, hollow tree with black, gaping roots. Inside the roots sat a little girl, or what looked like one. Pale skin, dripping wet, her hair clinging to her face. She was humming a tune Jesse's mother used to sing. "How do you know that song?" Jesse whispered. The girl didn't respond. She just tilted her head. Then Jesse saw it. The girl's mouth didn't move. The humming was coming from somewhere behind her. Jessie turned to run, but found herself face to face with more of them. Figures, children, dozens. All still, all silent, their mouths sewn shut. And then the humming stopped. The silence pressed against her skull like water pressure, and from the hollow tree something stepped out. It wasn't a child. It had no face, just a bark-like head with vertical slits for eyes and long bramble arms. And when it moved, the children followed. Jessie ran blindly through the woods, branches slicing her skin, the lullaby now playing louder, but from inside her own head. She woke up outside the cabins hours later with dried blood on her legs and mud in her teeth. No sign of the girl, no sign of anything. Just the taste of dirt and something rotten. That morning, the camper she was walking the night before told the nurse, "She left me because something that looked like her called her name from the trees." Jessie never returned to Camp Willowglade, but campers say sometimes late at night they hear humming in the trees. A song no one teaches anymore. The Thing in the Pit. Camp Granger had been around since the 1940s, built on what used to be an old mining site. The land was cheap and full of forgotten tunnels. Over time, most of the mine entrances were filled in, all but one. A collapsed shaft behind the archery range. They covered it with a rusted metal grate and put a sign, "Do not approach unstable ground." But unstable wasn't the issue. One night in July, 3 senior campers, Jaden, Cody, and Micah, decided to sneak out for a smoke and headed to the pit. Micah brought a flashlight. Cody brought beer. Jaden brought his Bluetooth speaker. As they joked and drank, Cody stood on the grate, stomping and daring the others to come close. That's when they heard it. 3 knocks from below. Jaden laughed it off. "It's just an echo." But Micah swore he saw something shift in the pit. Something pale, slithering between the rocks. Then the grate let out a groan, and Cody screamed. He didn't fall. He was pulled, yanked straight down into the hole. No chance to grab him. His scream vanished into the darkness like it had been swallowed. They ran to get help. The search team spent 2 days digging into the pit. They never found a body, but they found bones, human ones, dozens of them, some old, some not. They sealed it for good with concrete, and Camp Granger issued a quiet statement. Natural hazard. No foul play suspected. But Jaden and Micah never came back. And kids say that on windless nights, if you sit by the trees near the archery range, you can hear someone down there knocking 3 times, waiting for someone else to walk across. The face behind the fire. Camp Hollowbrook's central tradition was the welcome fire, a huge bonfire on the first night where each new camper shared a fun fact or a story. It was meant to bring everyone together. But last year, something went wrong. A boy named Alex sat quietly by the flames, listening as each person took their turn. When it came to him, he stood up and said, "I'm not supposed to be here." Everyone laughed. They thought he was joking. Then he said, "I came back, but I'm not the same one." People thought it was a creepy story, but Alex didn't laugh. That night, his bunkmates said he talked in his sleep, not mumbles, full conversations, like someone arguing with themselves in 2 voices. Later that week, campers started spotting 2 Alexes around the camp. One near the lake, one in the mess hall, one crying in the woods. When confronted, Alex broke down and said the real him had died in the lake last summer, and something had pulled him under and filled his lungs with cold. But when he woke up, he wasn't alone in his body. They thought he was mentally ill until his counselor found Alex's old file and realized he had drowned the previous year. His name was removed from the rosters, but some say he's still there. One version of him around the fire, smiling too wide, and one in the woods, watching the flames from a distance. Trail 13. There are 12 official trails at Camp Pine Hollow, but maps from the 1950s show a 13th one that branches off deep behind the mess cabin. They don't acknowledge it anymore. A counselor named Danny went looking for it out of curiosity. She found the old trailhead behind a wall of brush, marked by a rotting sign that simply read 13. No name, no direction. She stepped onto the trail at 4:17 p.m. When she came back, it was 2:42 a.m. She thought she had only been gone 20 minutes. Her shoes were soaked. Her hands were raw. She had dirt behind her eyes. She couldn't explain how. She just said the trees had moved, that they bent and whispered, that there were reflections walking next to her, whispering secrets in her voice. The camp dismissed her, but a week later, 2 kids went missing. Their last known location? Behind the mess hall. They were found 5 miles from camp, standing in a river, their eyes white, their mouths moving, but saying nothing. And in the distance, a camper swears she saw a 3rd child, identical to the one missing, standing at the edge of the trail, smiling, before vanishing into the brush. Now, every counselor is warned. If you see a trail that doesn't exist, don't walk on it. Don't blink. And whatever you do, if something calls your name from the trees, don't answer. So guys, that is some camping stories from ChatGPT. I'm gonna see if I can find some ones from from Reddit. Let's see if we can find another one. And how's your guys' summer going? Summer just began. And let me know if you guys have any plans for summer. Let me know in the comments. And then if you guys have any stories, any true scary stories, or any stories at all, whether it be camping or just whatever, you can send me your story at I got my email. I'll link it into the description down below. The Wild Archive 2255 at gmail.com. No caps or anything. But yeah, I'll link it down below. Let's see. Okay. So here's one. I got one right here. So this is from Reddit. This is r/no sleep, and then the username is u/Carl Sonaj, Sonaj. This one's called Another True Scary Camping Story. This event happened to me and a group of my friends in the summer of 2013 in Virginia. It's been a story I've told a lot of friends and classmates, but left out a very personal detail. This is the first time I'm sharing that detail. In high school, everyone was always looking for places to drink. That was the question every weekend practically. Where are we going to drink tonight? Once we found a spot where we could drink freely with limited chance of being arrested, we went there every weekend until we got bored. That sounds terrible, I know, but come on. We lived in an extremely boring, white, middle-class, gated, community-ridden town. Drinking was fun. Drinking was a fun way to almost rebel against our parents and get away from the community and get away from the continuity of life there. So my family and I moved here to Virginia from the Midwest, and we did a lot of outdoorsy things when we lived in the Midwest. And once the move to Virginia happened, my dad ended up getting really sick, which prevented him from being outside for long periods of time. Camping was always something my family and I used to do when I was little. And now, being a senior in high school, I remember how much beer my parents could drink without being disturbed. It was perfect. Get a bunch of buddies together, buy a few cases of beer, go out into the woods, and camp for a weekend, and get plastered for my birthday. So we did our research and found a nice looking place about 40 minutes away. So we packed the cars full with food and gear, and of course, beer. When we got to the campsite, the place was packed with campers and tents. We could hardly find a spot. The only space that was open was site number 2, which was right by the registration office. Fuck. They would definitely be able to see us drinking, but we noticed that everyone in the office left at like 5 p.m. and didn't come back until like 11 p.m. the next day. So we unpacked our stuff and camped for a weekend, and it was great. The weather was absolutely perfect. We never ran out of beer. We got to go swimming in the lake. We got the sun. We got away with it. So then, of course, we go back to our cookie-cutter neighborhood and tell all our friends how great it was. And the only question we had left was, when are we going to go next? So later that very same summer, we planned out another camping trip. This is where it got very strange. So we got like half of the original group to come again, as well as two very attractive girls who signed on to go with us. We were, of course, going to go back to the same place we went last time when we had such a fun time. So we did the 40-minute drive back to the campground, and I noticed it felt different on the drive in. I attributed it to the cloudy covered sky, but something felt very different. We arrived at the campground together, and the first thing I noticed was that there was nobody there. No tents or campers anywhere, except for one. There was also nobody in the registration office, which I thought was strange for 3 p.m. on a Friday at the end of July. I just remembered thinking, I should be weirded out by the fact that there is nobody here right now, but nobody else seems to be noticed, so it might just be me. But something's not right. It was like everybody else knew something that we didn't. The one camper there didn't have anybody in it. We were there for 3 days straight, and we didn't see a single person come in or out of the camper the whole time, nor did we see anything on their surroundings move around. The whole weekend ended up being weird. The weather was rainy and humid, so we spent a lot of time in the tent, just roasting and drinking beer. We were sitting there in the tent when one of the girls says, "Is there someone walking on our site right now?" So I poked my head out of the tent, and there was a state ranger parked at our site looking at me, not 3 feet away from the tent opening. I immediately freaked out because we had been drinking in the tent. So I said, "Hi sir, how can I help you?" And all he said back was, "Don't forget to pay your camping fees." Then he stood there for like a minute, just staring at me. He gave a small chuckle before backing up his truck, getting in and driving away in the direction of the empty camper. I went back and told the story with relief because we got away with drinking, but something didn't feel right about that. But that's not the detail. That comes into play that night. We were sitting around the campfire, drinking beer, and telling funny stories. Earlier in the day, one of our friends, Mitch, went to go get more beer since we ran out. The only problem was, he left at 3 p.m. and still wasn't back at 12 a.m., so I was slightly freaking out. The culmination of all the weird things deterred me from drinking any beer that night, so I could stay clear-headed in case anything weird happened. Boy, am I glad I made that decision. So we're all sitting around the campfire telling stories when I noticed a car drive up. Thinking it's Mitch, I jump up to see, but it's just a brown, rusty-looking truck, and it pulls into site number 1, which is a stone's throw away from us. It should have made me feel uncomfortable to know we're not alone out here in the woods, but it didn't. It made me paranoid, specifically for 2 reasons. Number 1, it was 12:30 a.m. There was no reason he should be here at this time if he was going to be camping. Number 2, he didn't have any tents or camping equipment in the back. All he had was a blue tarp covering a half-full bed. So I stayed aware, but calm as to not freak out my group of friends. But I noticed him setting up a floodlight and a wooden bench. But that's all I could see because he parked his truck on the far side of the campsite to block view from us. I talked myself down by saying, just stay calm, you're being paranoid. It's probably just something you don't want to get involved with. So I turned my full focus to my friends and even started drinking some beer. About an hour later, I made my worries about Mitch known to everyone, and they all calmed me down. But as I was agreeing with them, I looked up and I saw a man walking onto our site. But I only caught him in the light of the campfire. So he was on top of us before I could even react. The man said in a thick Eastern European accent, "Hello, I'm the park ranger for this park, and I just wanted to offer you 2 complimentary pieces of wood for your fire. You know, you're not allowed to bring your own wood here because it could have bugs on it. Enjoy, and have a good night." We waited until he was out of earshot before giving it the, "What in the fucking hell was that? We're outside. Don't bugs, live out here? Why would it matter?" But I noticed when he put the wood down next to the fire, there was a part of him that didn't bend when he did. Once he was walking away, and I saw it swinging from his belt loop. Did I know he was carrying a large machete. Mitch still wasn't back at 2 a.m., and I was afraid for his life, so I asked my close friend Mop to ride with me to go find him. It was one road drive, so he had to be there no matter what. I was also going to voice my terrors and concerns with him in the car to see if he felt the same things I did. We were driving down the road looking for either a crashed car or Mitch heading in the opposite direction. As soon as I opened my mouth to ask Mop if he was freaking out too, we saw Mitch speed past us, which was a huge relief for me. I whipped a quick U-turn and started following him back to the site. Once we were all back, we told Mitch the story of the strange wood guy and how we thought he had died. But he had brought the beer, and we all started drinking once he was back. I began to notice this pounding sound coming from site number 1 that sounded a lot like he was chopping wood. Yeah, that makes sense. He's the park ranger, and he is chopping wood for them to sell, and he gave us 2 complimentary pieces. That makes sense. Until we ran out of wood, and they asked me to go steal some more. Nothing made sense about that. We brought bundles of wood, enough to last us through the night, and it was gone. So I guess I had to go steal some wood. Now, the wood tower was in between site number 1 and site number 2, but it was closer to site number 1. I snuck from our campsite through the woods towards the wood tower. I was drunk at this point and was not scared of the mysterious wood chopper. So I get to the wood tower and begin sliding pieces of wood into my arms. The more I get, the less times I have to come and steal more. So I grab about 8 big pieces and started sneaking back, but not before throwing a glance in the direction of site number 1, where the chopping sound continued. My eyes focused on the wooden bench where I saw the park ranger chopping with his machete, a human leg. I saw him plummet the large knife in the thigh, and it cut in about halfway before he raised it again and slammed it back into the same spot, severing it from the rest of the leg. I closed my eyes and froze. I immediately started tearing up and felt like I was going to puke. I felt like I was standing there for hours, there in the dark with my arms shaking from holding the heavy wood and my eyes watering from the trauma that unfolded in front of me. I pulled my legs out of the frozen state and slunked back into our sight. I dropped the wood down and just sat. I didn't know what to do. I could have said something and we could have gone home and gotten in trouble, but I wouldn't have known everyone would be okay, or I could keep quiet and not freak everybody out. When I got back, the jokes about the wood guy were spewing out at everyone, and everyone was laughing, but it was as if someone had turned my hearing aid down and I was just listening to cotton. I told myself it wasn't a leg, it was a log. It had to have been a log. This doesn't happen to people like you. It's a log. So after some time, we burnt up the 8 logs I brought back, and I just went into the tent and laid in bed. Everybody followed. It's a log, remember? It's just a log. I woke up the next day to a beautiful hot summer day. I looked over it and all my friends were alive and well, sleeping and waking up next to me. That was one of the best feelings I've had, knowing that the night of worrying was for nothing. But I couldn't help but remember an extremely realistic dream of the wood guy peering into our tent from the screen window on the side. I made eye contact with him and shook my head. No. And he slowly walked away. But you know, it's just a dream, I guess. Wow. It's very scary. So I just want you guys to enjoy, your summer and everything, and just be safe, use caution when you're camping or hiking or whatever. Just use caution or whatever. And, I hope to go camping this summer because I've not been camping in a long time. Probably since I was a kid. And so I am going to go camping this summer. And I'll make sure to have, at least a pocket knife or something with me to protect me or whatever. But let me know if you guys like going camping or going hiking or exploring the woods or whatever. Comment down and let me know. But the fire's dying down and the woods are getting quiet again. If you made it through all 4 stories, congratulations. Not everyone makes it out of the forest. But just remember, some trails never close. Some names still echo in the dark. If you got your own true camping horror stories, something you can't explain, send it to me. But until then, pack light, don't stray from the path, and whatever you do, don't answer when the forest calls your name. This is the Wild Archive. Stay strange and stay safe out there.